Hi, and welcome back. Thanks for joining us, Andreas, and congratulations on your film.
Thanks so much.
So I want to start out with asking, have you always been interested in the art world? And is this something that, how did you discover and first hear about the painting?
Actually, I was approached by a friend of mine who's also a producer and a director. And he asked me if I would be interested in this story. And I actually hadn't really heard about it before that. But it was a few months after the auction at Christie's. So there were a lot of talk about it. And when I dug into it, there was so many stories within this bigger story that we needed to discover and to investigate. I haven't really been that much into fine arts in my previous career. I'm very much into music, and I've done several documentaries on musicians. So it's not far from my world, but it's I'm not an art expert or anything like that. So it's in that way, it's been a new field to explore for me.
That's great. And I think there's a line that's said in the film that I think is really interesting, which is and how it relates to documentary filmmaking. But what people are scared about in the art world the most is the truth. And with obviously documentary filmmaking, there is a lot of truth in it, and that's something that we talk about a lot as what makes nonfiction so great. But was everyone open to talking to you? Was it difficult to kind of figure out who was the right person to connect with? And there's a lot of characters beyond the painting. So I'm curious to hear more about that.
Yeah. When we started out, I started by approaching the people who had been close to the painting. That was the idea, to tell the story of the painting and its journey through the people who had actually hold it in their hands. So I started by contacting Robert Simon and Alexander Parrish that you see in the film, and then Diane Modestini, and they were all very open to talk. So that was a really good beginning. But then later on, when we got more into the story and into the more secretive parts of it, then some people were closed and other people were willing to speak. And especially towards the end, we are dealing with some very big institutions and nation states, and they were very closed and didn't want to share their thoughts. And that's part of the story, that it's such a big topic, and it's it's something that they rather not talk about, because that's the easy way to deal with it. But that's it. It also shows how much is at stake politically with this painting, what kind of political significance it got. So
Yeah.
Talking about truth, I mean, that's definitely a main theme of the film, and what we discover is that in a way truth is lost because of economic and political interests. So nobody's allowed to see the painting, to examine it, and the whole mystery surrounding it. We are not really let into to the secretive parts of it. And I think it's not just about art, but it shows how the political system works, that if the stakes are really high, then the truth is compromised.
Totally. And I think that must have been a great challenge to making the film, is once you get to the point where people start to kind of maybe close the doors on the conversation, what other challenges do you think were there beyond that in making this particular film come together?
It was a challenge because there are so many details in the story and so many twists and turns. So it's at some point we actually thought, well, this could be a series maybe, but because then we were able to tell all the different detours and within this larger narrative of the painting's journey. But then we put that idea aside because we wanted to make a feature film, but fitting all these characters into one narrative and decide what's important, what's really interesting but not really important for the narrative, and all those really difficult choices, that has been the biggest challenge, I think. And what we found out actually was that we needed to focus on the painting all the time, because if we spend too much time, for example in the second act with the war between Bouvier and Rybolovlev, if we went too far down that road, it would take over the film, or it would be very difficult to get back to the painting. So it was actually the painting that showed the way for the narrative.
Yeah, Act 2, I think, is one of it's where it really kind of starts to dig into the intrigue, and that plot line is, I'm surprised he talked to you. I'm surprised that, like, I mean, he clearly, that battle that between him and Mr. R is still ongoing. It sounds like. I was just seeing in the news now there's another Countersuit involved, and as a filmmaker, how do you navigate this kind of, like, you're trying to make sure you don't side with one particular person?
It was challenging because, of course, we reached out to Dmitry Rybolovlev as well, and he was not willing to talk as long as the trials are ongoing, and it seems like they will go on forever, because he's suing Bouvier in 8 different countries, and Bouvier is suing him back. There are like around 50 lawyers working on that case, just on Bouvier's side. So it's a crazy affair between the two of them, and yeah. So we had the challenge that we had Bouvier, who was pretty talkative, and then we didn't have anything from Rybolovlev, and how do you then balance that conflict between the two? So we had to find other people who were looking at Bouvier with more critical eyes. So we got that side of it. So it wasn't just Bouvier's own narrative. And I think we succeeded, but ideally we would have like both men like in a fight on camera. But yeah, less can do. And maybe it would have actually taken over the film if they were there, both of them. But that, yeah, that was it's a whole story in itself. So it's worthy a film in itself.
Yeah, I feel like that's the spin-off of a next project for sure. Yeah. For anyone who wasn't really familiar with the story of the painting, and I myself was not as familiar with it until I watched the film, there's so many little surprises. There's several surprises along this journey. What was the biggest surprise for you during all of your research and during making the project? What surprised you the most?
That's a difficult question.
If you can even say it, because maybe the surprise was something you're not allowed to speak of.
Yeah, I'm just trying to roll back in time and try to figure out where I was very surprised. Let me see. I've been really surprised by the fact that the story keeps on developing. It's a never-ending story. Every month there's a new discovery regarding this painting. Just some time ago, there was this sketch that was found in Italy that was supposed to be the original sketch for the painting, but the sketch looked completely different than the painting. So the scholar who found it was sure that the one we know today of the Salvator Mundi is the wrong one. So she came forward with this new sketch that had spent 50 years in some basement in Italy, and then the whole world would write about it uncritically. So it's I think it's a a quality that Leonardo da Vinci has, that it fascinates people so much that they, every time there's just a little tiny thing, then it can create headlines. And again, the truth is lost because nobody really checked or very few people who write these stories, they check the facts before they write them. So it just becomes endless new angles and new stories. And that has surprised me that it will never settle. And I think as long as there's no scientific proof that it is by Da Vinci or that it is not by Da Vinci, then it will keep on going like that.
Have you, one of the things I was totally taken aback by was that there is potentially this book by the Louvre, and have you seen it? Everyone I'm sure was taught, I mean, they talk about it with you, but did you ever see it where, and clearly weren't able to really show that it exists, but so it's just, I'm curious about that.
Yeah, we saw it. We got a PDF of it. So we were able to read it. But the funny thing about the book is that it doesn't really give any definitive answers. So it's like it's stating that it is by Da Vinci, but if you look closer or if you ask scholars who know of these things, then all the main arguments, all the main points that is supposed to prove that it's a Da Vinci can also be used to prove that it was one of his students. So it's like, yeah, you think you have something, a final answer, and then it slips away.
Yeah.
And that's really fascinating. And I think that's the reason why the story has developed like that, is that as long as you can't prove either or, then people can use this painting to their own benefit. They can say, MBS can say, well, I need a Da Vinci, so I'm gonna make this the most valuable painting in the world, and then it becomes a Da Vinci. Or the National Gallery in London, they really want to have a newly discovered Da Vinci for their big exhibition, and then they are very, very positive when they examine it, and then they get a Da Vinci. So I think that's really interesting, that it's like the painting is a kind of a token that you can use for your own purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, but let's talk about the ending of the film, because it does continue to change. So how do you know at what point you need to stop making the film has to, the story's ending on this particular note? Because I'm sure it's quite daunting to continue to see things in the news and be like, oh, I wish I could add it. Is it strictly because of, oh, I have a deadline with with my distributor?
Yeah, that's one part of the of the reason, the time pressure, definitely. Yeah. But there's also a limit to how within one narrative, how much can you keep on going, and for a long time we considered the Louvre exhibition as like the climax, because Louvre is the most prestigious art institution in the world, and they have the most advanced laboratory, and if they look at it and they give their verdict, that could be like the final answer. But then it turned out that it was not, and that the painting never showed up in the Louvre, and then the story kept on developing, and we had to find a way to settle it, but also keep the story open. So yeah. So time will tell if we ever get a closure to this story.
I don't know if it will ever end. It does seem, and that's the thing about the film that I think is remarkable, is how it touches on everyone having an opinion and everyone being able to kind of join in the conversation. Certainly with social media and our connectivity, it's so different than, you know, and you're able to assemble all of these characters to talk about it. Was there any particular interview that that was your favorite, or like insight that you thought was most interesting that may have not made it into the film?
there was, I mean, the interview with Diane Modestini, I think I mean, that was definitely crucial for the film. And I think she gave so much to the film. So for me, she's the one character besides the painting, that you get close to and you get intimate with, and that you feel for. So I felt that I really wanted to combine this cacophonic narrative with like a story of a woman who had devoted her life to restoring art, who had lost her husband and restored the painting when she was grieving, and then eventually who wanted to move on in life, but who felt that she was like in a way captured by this whole story. So I think, yeah, meeting her and getting close to her was probably the biggest experience. But talking about interviews, the interview with Jerry Saltz was really fun and really amazing. We did it actually quite recent. It was in February this year, and we went to New York during the pandemic, of course. And I had tried to contact him for 2 years on email, and he never really replied. He replied once, I think, but like just postponing it. And then at the end, just before leaving for the US, I called him on his phone, and I had done that a number of times, and he never picked up. And then suddenly he picked up, and then I said, well, it's Andreas, the filmmaker who's making this film about the Salvator Mundi. And then he said, oh, I really hope it wasn't you who were calling. I really hope that it was someone else. And then he actually said yes. He agreed to make an interview, and then he came to because of the COVID, we couldn't really meet and greet. So the cinematographer and I, we were renting an Airbnb. We stayed in the bedroom, and then he entered without meeting us, and we were just on the phone. So we had put up the camera in the living room, and then he was like walking around with his mask and rambling about things. And then at the end, he sat down, taking off the mask, and then he just gave like 40 minutes of monologue about the Salvator Mundi. And it was so fun. It was like a play, like a comedy. So it was crazy. I think I asked him 2 questions in those 40 minutes. So he had like, it seemed like he had rehearsed it, but he gave another aspect to it that we really wanted, because he's
he
so,
just rips. It's a very fun, it gives a little bit of light to the darkness of it all, which I think is really great.
Yeah, and there's, I mean, in some aspects, there's a lot of truth to what he says, but in other ways, he's like exaggerating big time. So
yes. Is there, I think we got time for like the one last question, but I'm curious if there's anything that you believed at the beginning of making this film, and also like how long you've been making it, but what is there something you thought when you started that at this point now has changed, both about the painting, but also about this political and business world of fine arts?
I hadn't really imagined that the painting would reach this level, so that it would be a discussion point between Saudi Arabia and France on the top level. I thought that it was like not working like that, and I'm surprised that art can reach to that level and become political in that way. And then I'm kind of surprised and shocked about how much of the world's most amazing art that is locked away in free ports, because this system is crazy, and And I mean, all these rich people just who are investing in art just for economical reasons, and just store them away. I think it's very, very sad. And I think art is a beautiful statement of humanity, and it in a way it belongs to humanity. We should all be able to look at these beautiful pieces, and instead it just belongs to the richest people on earth who don't even enjoy them. And I think that's very, very sad. And it's like a very, yeah, it's like a symptom of extreme capitalism in a way, I think. And that kind of shocked me a little bit, or a lot.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
for sure. It definitely, it's something that sits with you after the film. So,
that's good.
and I also was shocked by how much of it is in free ports as well. It's you just forget. Well, that's all the time we have. Andreas, thank you so much for being here and talking about the film. Congratulations again.
Thanks so much.
And I want to thank Sony Picture Classics for working with us on this screening. The film will release in New York and LA on August 13th. For all of you at home, don't forget to vote for our audience award and connect with us at the Festival Hub on docs.afi.com. Thanks.